Hey, hey, hey! Do you thirst for comprehensive, lengthy analysis videos now that Digibro only uploads like once a month? Or thirst for lesbians? If you answered yes to either of those questions, go watch my good friend Zaria's great analysis of Citrus that went up yesterday. First, watch my video though. Thank you! For a span of time from 4th through 10th grade of school, I read literally hundreds of books. My family went to the library every Saturday almost without fail, and I'd leave, tote bags stuffed with novels in hand, only to head back next Saturday and pick out more. Perhaps as a result of stuffing my head with such a dense concentration of tales of adventure at such a high rate, I could not escape a deep desire to go do something special, something truly exciting. I wanted to slink around in dark clothing in the dead of night, observing the sleeping world around me unobserved. I wanted to go learn echolocation and how to be a rager from Rip Red. Yeah, that's right, I'm an OG Suzanne Collins fan. If you only heard about Susie C after she ripped off Battle Royale, get outta here! I, of course, did not end up training under Rip Red, nor did I end up satisfying the broader and more universal underlying adolescent desire those wishes stemmed from. That longing to go out and do something unconstrained by the societal boundaries of the next decade plus already charted out for me. That longing to go do something a little bit crazy. A Place Further Than the Universe is about a cast of people who actually went out and did that crazy thing. Shirase is insane. In episode 2, the show itself calls her plan preposterous and absurd after lingering on this crazed smile of hers. And if you stop to break down what exactly she's undertaken, that label of absurd certainly sounds fitting. The death of her mother on her research trip to Antarctica traumatized Shirase pretty deeply, instilling in her a desperation to go there herself, to find some closure in confirming for herself that her mother isn't still alive, waiting for her out there. In order to achieve this seemingly impossible goal, she comes up with what is honestly one of the better plans a high schooler could have for getting to Antarctica. Just make a shit ton of money and buy your way there. The goal for this that she set and achieved was to get 1 million yen, 9,500 United States dollars going by the current exchange rate, an endeavor that she completed in less than 2 years in all likelihood. In Japan, a child must make it through their compulsory education, so graduate from middle school, in order to be allowed to work, barring a few exceptions, like for child actors. Since Shirase is a second-year high school student, one who has not completed that second year, that time frame between her graduation from middle school and the start of the series is a narrow one, and all the time she had to make that money in. The average minimum wage in Japan is 780 yen, so calculating with an assumed hourly wage of 800 yen, that would be 1,250 work hours required from Shirase in order to reach that 1 million yen total. That would be 50 25-hour work weeks, basically a full year of having close to the maximum number of weekly hours possible for a job to be considered part-time, for someone who is, mind you, fresh out of middle school. As I said, insane. This isn't even accounting for income tax, which is taken out of workers' wages, similarly to how it's done in the US, which would be 5% of what she makes at her income level. Presumably, she's getting some kind of allowance or stipend of money to be able to live on her own with her mother dead and father seemingly not present, so the thought that she put some of that towards her 1 million yen arises. But when she lays out all her money in episode 12 and names which job each bill came from, she goes through it without naming any source except a job. So as far as our best info on it indicates, that million yen was entirely money from wages. Even spread out over the course of a year and a half, and not a singular year, that's deeply impressive. Even more so when you learn that in addition to typical stuff like a cashier gig, she did physical labor like working as a mover, and in some capacity worked in a factory. The lengths to which she goes in order to realize this goal speak to a drive that absurd and preposterous are entirely apt descriptors of. Shirase demonstrates a commitment to her desires that cannot be related to by the common person, however, which is where Kimari comes in. Kimari is much more representative of how things were for the rest of us, a vague, listless discontent, perhaps a preparation to run away to have our adventure that we find some last-minute excuse for backing out on, and no strong chance of ever following through on our feelings on this. As director Atsushi Ishizuka described her, Kimari is a character that wants to go out and do something, but can't seem to take that first step, and I think that a lot of people are in that position. And you know another position it turns out a lot of people are in? Making a video on this exact show. Listen to me, I promise, I had this video idea weeks ago. Like, I didn't know this was gonna be the big show that everyone made an analysis video on. I just edited a video on it for Jeff before editing my own video on it, and I know I started writing mine before he did, but I never got around to finishing it in time. Like, look, I used to make topical videos, I admit it. I know this looks bad, but come on. It should be pretty clear by my view counts that I'm not going for relevancy anymore. You've got to believe me when I say this is just coincidence and I didn't plan. I didn't plan any of this, by the way. I was sitting in bed at 6 a.m. last night falling asleep, and this script was rattling around in my head, and I got this idea for where to take the script. I don't know why I decided it was a good idea to follow the flight of fancy taken by my fatigue-addled mind, but here I am. And like, yeah, this is technically cool and smart and creative and shit because I'm going all meta with the video, but that's already a thing at this point. Like, this isn't original by any means, and the only moderate novel value this holds is being one of those, whoa, video essays are actually creatively bankrupt videos that goes up into that extra level of meta by saying that those kinds of videos are themselves cliche by now. If I was really cool, I'd film this whole part with the webcam I just got. It'd also make editing this way easier, since finding visuals for something as abstract as this is gonna be a bitch, but I don't actually have the skills or camera presence to rattle all this off unscripted, or remember this as something written down, so I don't even have that going for me. Sincerely though, I've gotten partway into 5 or 6 scripts recently, which is not a thing I normally do. I was very much a literally cannot start working on another script until I've taken my current project all the way to completion gal previously, but I'm just afraid of my scripts not being good enough now. Part of it is that just barely getting one video out a month, there's now a greater degree of pressure to exclusively make impactful, worthwhile videos. No more, hey, look, this show has a cool shot. This is an example of good directing. Here's a picture of the director, they are good. Now let me show you a theme. Look, birds. Video on half a dozen seasonal shows. I've got to have a worthwhile point. But I also just feel a pressure to justify my own existence by achieving a certain degree of quality. And that's an ironic issue. You see, my advice to those who come to me for it has always been, don't worry about if you think what you're making is bad. Just make a bunch of stuff because that's the only way you improve. Make your thing you think is bad, put it out there, and keep moving forward. And let me tell you, putting out stuff I've got misgivings about is definitely the only way I've been able to get this far myself. But at what stage does that end? How many followers can you have? How close can you get to making a living off of something before you shouldn't feel ambivalent about something when you put it out? Or does creating such a standard just unfairly punish people with lower self-esteems? I mean, I do think I had some legitimately great points to make about Place Further in the Universe, that in spite of all these videos being made on it, I could still have the coolest, or at least one of the best. In fact, let's go down the list of notes so I can get all these ideas out there. The way that Shirase makes things sound totally reasonable and believable to Kimari, but actually her points fall apart when put under the scrutiny of outside parties, like when Megami breaks down the issues with her plan in episode 2, is a fantastic portrayal of the way those kids with big plans, you know who I'm talking about, we all knew that guy, can sweep people up in their ambition. Her line, I'm the daughter of an Antarctic expedition member and a girl in high school. I know everything about Antarctica, is a perfect summation of this hubris. The ending of episode 2 is just stellar, flat out. The way that the image of sprinting through back alleys of the red light district at night, running away from Arctic expeditionary members, with stellar animation that gives a weighty sense of manic, uncontrolled speed, as a neon haze formlessly congeals together in the background, offers unbelievable levels of catharsis on that desire to break free from the path set out for you and do something insane. I also love the degree of spite the girls, Shirase especially, have about the whole thing. As someone with this desire, society itself is doubting you, and one of the greatest aspects of that general desire is the longing to shove it all in their faces once you've achieved it, proved that it wasn't that you were unreasonable or insane, but that they'd simply had such insecure, weak-willed views of what their own potential could be, and attempted to impose those on you as well. It's especially endearing how that desire to shut doubters down is one of the few things that can bring Shirase's self-confidence out, when without that combativeness she's extremely shy. It helps her break out of the mold of the real shy and nervous girl archetype, while still having the legitimate appeal of that trope. Shirase doesn't attempt to challenge all these people in some sort of argument, prove herself to them. She just says, fuck you, I'm going to go achieve my goals and make that my self-evident proof of how wrong you were to doubt me. Which very much resonates with my own experiences. Early on in my channel, I had a bunch of people in a Discord server going after my videos, and eventually I just ended things with, okay then, if that's how you want to be, then fuck you. I'm going to go make a living off of making YouTube videos about cartoons. Which, you know, incredibly humorously naive and a bit cringy in its childishness, but guess who's doing just that right now? Kimari's characterization also does that whole breaking her archetypical mold thing. During their training camp, Kimari furrows her brow and says, I bet this is gonna be difficult, with this goofy expression as she picks up the compass, a great bit of comedically well-timed airheaded humor. However, it's Shirase, the knowledgeable de facto group leader, who ends up having minor difficulties with it, and Kimari, who quickly becomes adept with that device. In one fell swoop, she breaks free of that dojiko archetype, has some legitimately cool characterization as someone who, in spite of her general willingness to charge into things headlong, the compensated dating comes to mind, also underrates how much of a competent quick learner she can be when doing so, and enforces the general themes of the show with this task she bet was going to be difficult, being something she achieves through her willingness to go ahead and give her full effort to it, even though she thinks it won't be easy. The craft on display here is remarkably efficient, cleanly packing all this goodness into the general narrative progress of the episode without slowing that storytelling down or hindering it in any way. The series simply makes full use of this time it has, while letting those events play out to accomplish more than advancing the plot and nothing else, which is often the mark of a great anime. On the subject of that craft, and in spite of my mockery of just this type of analysis earlier, I do want to shout out two directing moments that really stood out to me as fantastic. The use of straight-up horror film language and style to display the fear Kimari feels as she reveals the plans she made under her family's noses to her mom is utterly inspired, a brilliant creative choice that is entirely accurate in conveying how being in those situations feel, on top of being hilarious through the contrast between the stakes being portrayed and felt by Kimari and what those stakes are in reality. On a slightly more subtle note, I love how when Megami reveals the rumors being spread about Kimari, and Shirase is getting upset about that, Hinata, in her regular clothes, is so strongly contrasted visually against these girls, all in their school uniforms. A more adult figure who is removed from this high school drama, and who advises them to just ignore it, since by their very nature these rumors can't be effectively combated. Another little thing I appreciated was the brief exchange that occurred when the rest of the girls first saw Yuzuki out of a work outfit. It doesn't serve much of a purpose really, besides showing that she's a tad irritable or on edge, so it sticks out. But this sort of careful consideration of the kind of femininity you're presenting, with Yuzuki's resentment of the cutesy girly girl style, in spite of how well she pulls it off, is one of those neat details you're more likely to get with a female director at the helm like this series has. Especially as a trans girl, the amount of femininity in my presentation, and the manner in which that femininity is presented, is something that often weighs on my mind, which made it really cool to see those concerns reflected here. And now for the final thing I've got here, which is the point. The idea for this whole thing as I'd had it last night was for it to descend into that meta-nonsense and conclude there. But as I wrote it all out, I felt too endeared to the stuff I had to say about this series to just throw that away. I guess that as I abandoned the pretense that this video was supposed to be good, or at least conventionally good, the words just started flowing out of me, and that mental block I'd had, insecure about the value of my own thoughts on this series, lifted. With that pressure gone, the issue of sitting down to write the script, only to go leave and do something else after writing a few sentences, was gone, and the rest of it just came flowing out of my fingertips here. That's not exactly a good habit to get into consistently, but I guess since it's been a little while since my last self-indulgent, let me get into the meta of this own video's construction video. It's not too bad. The big idea from a place further than the universe that really resonated with me was the one that arose from how convenient the way they managed to get onto the Antarctic expedition might feel like. The coincidence seems a bit absurd and unlikely, but if you really pursue something in real life with that manic, devoted commitment, things like that do happen, and they'll happen much in the same way that it ends up happening in this show. You make a specific, researched, labored-over plan, that falls through so you improvise a secondary option on the fly, that fails but all of a sudden a new potential avenue of achieving this goal will find its way into your field of view, only to lead to another dead end as you chase it around the corner. However, because of the simple act of spending so much time obsessed with and in proximity to that goal, if there is any way you would possibly be able to reach it, you will end up giving yourself a good chance of encountering that way of doing so. If you really want to work for a specific company and show up there every day looking for a way to get hired, asking for them to give you a shot, you've got a decent chance of eventually seeing the boss walk in one day. And when you ask her to give you a chance, she'll hear from you about how you've been showing up every day for a month trying to get this job, and hear from her exasperated secretary that yes, you have indeed been pestering him about this for a month, and impressed by that work ethic and devotion, she'll give you a shot. I know this can happen because that was the personal story from some motivational guy they brought in to give their life story or something in high school. I believe this was a law firm, so not quite as exciting as the goal in this show, but you get the idea. If there is any possible route through which you could obtain your goal, even if the best plan you can devise to achieve it is a long shot, working towards it with every single volt of energy that you can muster legitimately has a decent chance of allowing you to achieve it. As someone who wanted to do videos full-time, when Jeff asked if I wanted to take on a video on commission, I took that opportunity, because I wanted to put as much work into editing and get as much savings as possible. And when suddenly the circumstances arose where I would need to be making enough to support myself unexpectedly, the fact I had that working relationship with him allowed me to do so while still working on YouTube videos full-time, even if it wasn't my own videos full-time, which has been so much more valuable for growing as a creator than stocking shelves part-time would have been. Ultimately, finding the path to success is often less about drafting the perfect roadmap to get yourself there than it is about putting yourself in that general area and then staying around there until you either stumble upon that path or run into someone else who is also heading in that direction and can show you where that path is. Also, apparently the path to finding the videos of people you're subscribed to literally doesn't exist consistently anymore, so hit the notification bell, I guess, to have a chance of seeing mine in the future. Hey, I've got stuff. For the video I did with Pause and Select, go check out the video I did with Pause and Select. And for a cool podcast, go check out my cool podcast, Trans Culture Club. Thank you for sticking with me. I had people drilling into my roof for 10 hours yesterday, so I didn't sleep. I'm dying. More videos than one this month, I promise. I love you all, but Psyker, Car Keys, MathWiz97, Jonathan Conley, Skylar Morrow, Tyler Monk, Sakamoto Mio, Tincho37, Josh Grant, Lord Liquid Bacon II, Stella Luna, Joaquim Alfelt, Darian De Sotel, Azure Zero, David McCown, Kieran Rice, Hajort Dog, and Matt Bekelder get smoochies. Thank you, everyone else supporting me over on Patreon, too. You're great. Bye.